and I had a year 8 class and we weren't getting on well at all. I mean, it was terrible. And I was halfway through the year, and honestly, I felt that these students had learnt nothing from me for 6 months. Hi, Richard here again from Learn, Implement, Share. So in this video, I'm going to tell a bit of a story. This is quite a monumental story of turning a class around. And this poor class had me as their teacher in the first half of the year, and that was tragic. But the second half of the year was a good story. So let's get started. I'll try and keep this short. There are some big takeaways from this story, and hopefully you might get something out of it. So if we go back a couple of decades, I was teaching in a school, and I had this, it was quite a small school, and I had a year 8 class, and we weren't getting on well at all. I mean, it was terrible. And I was halfway through the year, and honestly, I felt that these students had learnt nothing from me for 6 months. I won't bore you with all the details, but it wasn't pretty. And I really wanted to do something to try and turn this around. And this school was kind of in a bit of a community, and I knew they could work together better than the way I was trying to work with them. So what I ended up doing was I actually created these kits of hands-on activities. So there was, I don't know, there was 4 or 5 or 6 different topics. There was measurement, and there was money stuff, and there was Pythagoras, and there was other things. And the topics that were less practical, there's measurement. Did I mention that? There were some topics that were less practical, and they were more textbook based. But where possible, I had practical activities. And so what would happen is I divided, this is a boys' school, I divided the boys into groups, and in rotation they would go through these topics. And I think this whole thing took about, I don't know, maybe 2.5 months. So there's 2 or 3 weeks per topic, and then they would all switch, right? Now there were a few problems I had to solve. So first of all, I made up all the kit, and I had to have a structure so the kids would go through, the boys would go through in order, and all these different activities, and they'd also do some textbook work, but there was an order, a run sheet that they had to use. I was very aware that I could not be out helping in amongst the boys in the classroom because then my back is turned to half the class and there would be mayhem. So I had to stay seated in my front corner. I could not leave my desk, so I had full view of everyone. I mean, obviously this is a very student-centered approach, right? And I figured that could really help shift the dynamic. But I couldn't afford just to have them go through the run sheet and not be involved. So how can I involve myself in the process? How can I inject myself in the process without being physically up and about in the classroom? So I invented what's called a check-off system. And so every kit had a check-off run sheet, and the boys individually, so each boy got, so if there's a group of 4 or 5, say, that each had their own run sheet and their own check-off sheet. So they didn't all have to work together and keep the same pace as a group, but they tended to. So each kid had to come out and with a check-off, and I had my cheat sheet. So, the boy would come out, and I knew he was doing measurement. Check-off number 2, sir. And I'd look, and on my cheat sheet it would be, has to show an understanding of area. And so I would say, oh, great. So can you demonstrate to me how you'd find the area of this, and what about the area of that? So I'd just be like checking them off. And then once I knew that they understood, I would check them off, and then they go on to the next thing. So those check-offs were slotted into their run sheet for each kit. So the setup of this was really important. What else do I need to tell you? I did have a school leader, who was actually the principal. He came in with me to help kick this off because I put so much effort into this. I said to him, look, this has to work. Can you come in? Because I don't feel I've got the credibility and the clout to really kick this off. So he helped start it off. But I probably didn't even need that because the boys loved this. So they've gone from hating maths lessons to loving this whole thing. The kids who I was at loggerheads with, once they were in this new program, I was their best friend almost. Because I'd broken that dynamic of me, teacher at the front, kind of chewing kids out and them being aggro and that whole thing. So it worked amazingly. The check-off system was brilliant because it engaged me in the process. I don't recall any major problem I had in terms of keeping it on track or anything. They all did the work. And then the icing on the cake, I didn't expect this, but at the end of the year, they have a speech night. One of my most problematic kids, who was also one of the brightest, he was so intelligent, and he had ways of kind of disrupting lessons. He was quite a work of art, this guy. He took it upon himself to demonstrate Pythagoras using the rope knot system. So he demonstrated to the assembled audience of parents and friends with his two mates Pythagoras. They did it fully seriously, and this was all a direct result of a series of units of work, practical work that I had created. So I'm sitting watching this and thinking, well, Richard, I think we can mark this one off as a success. So now, I didn't tell that story to blow my trumpet, right? The takeaways are that through going from a procedural-based, teacher-directed, I'm trying to get you to do this type approach, traditional approach, with a tough class, to one where the students had ownership over what they did. It was highly structured, and I was still involved in the process, but they took ownership. They were the ones that had to do whatever was written down. They were the ones that came to me in their own time. They were the ones that dictated the pace at which they learnt. So that dynamic was an absolute game changer. So that's called, that's student agency. That's taking responsibility for their learning. And also, I guess you could say it was a bit more conceptually oriented because the students were learning from hands-on, from a well-structured hands-on type unit of work. But the student-centeredness was the key, and they still had to finish by a certain time and all that. But it was amazing. So a class that I was so offside with, all I needed to do was to change the pedagogy, make it interesting, allow them to collaborate, keep it tight so as it would work, and allow that student-centeredness and allow them to take ownership, and all the behaviour disappeared. It was incredible. So hopefully there's some takeaways you get out of that. I'm not suggesting that you shift all your lessons to practical kits, because that took hours and hours and hours to set up. But there are some things you can take out of that hopefully you can apply. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.